The wife, a beloved local singer with no known conflicts, was adored by many in the community. But no one could have imagined what happened when her husband returned home from a doctor's visit to find her brutally murdered, her body hidden in the closet. The police investigated all possible suspects, yet came up empty-handed. However, they overlooked a potential method of murder. Until her final moments, the unfortunate victim had been stitching soles for her killer, leaving many in sorrow. So, who was the one to ruthlessly kill this singer? Join me as we delve into a real-life case from China, filled with twists that will leave you astounded in the final moments. But first, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to get notified every time a new video is uploaded. The setting of this true crime story took place in 2010 in Hubei Province, China. Enshi is a district-level city in the western part of Hubei Province. In Enshi, there is a county named Xianfeng, named after a Song dynasty king, with a population of Xianfeng County not exceeding 300,000 people. Over 10 years ago, in Xianfeng County, a case occurred that shocked the small rural area. To this day, many people still recount this horrific murder case. On the morning of October 26, 2010, the phone in the Xianfeng County Police Department office, Hubei Province, suddenly rang. On the other end, a man's voice came through, trembling and hurried, interrupted to the point of being hard to hear clearly. "Is this the police department? There has been a break-in at my house. But what worries me the most is my wife. She has suddenly disappeared without a trace." After listening, the officers immediately requested that he provide a specific address and reminded him not to tamper with the scene to avoid affecting the investigation. Immediately after, the investigative team quickly got into their vehicles and traveled to the scene, following the informant's directions. The location was a small apartment on the 3rd floor of Area 2 Building 1 under the original planning committee along Yanhe Street. It was a 3-bedroom apartment, situated in a rather quiet area. When the police arrived, the man introduced himself as Liang Zijun, a driver in Xianfeng County. However, when the police inquired further about the identity of his wife, a look of surprise was clearly evident on the officer's face. "You just said, what is your wife's name?" Liang Zijun looked at the police officer, somewhat suspicious, but still replied, "My wife is Zhang Shuni. Is there a problem?" Upon hearing this, the police officer continued, "Is she the singer Zhang Shuni, who is quite famous locally? Or is it just a coincidence of the name?" Liang Zijun then confirmed that his wife is indeed the singer Zhang Shuni, who works at the County Drama Theater. This information left the police somewhat confused, as Zhang Shuni was beloved by many for her deep and emotive singing voice. Liang Zijun continued to recount the events in detail. He stated that on October 25, Liang Zijun went to a hospital in Enshi City for a routine health checkup. After completing his examination and buying medicine as directed by the doctor, it was already late in the evening. Therefore, Liang Zijun decided to stay overnight at a hotel due to the long journey, planning to return the next morning. Before going to sleep, he called his wife to remind her to lock the door carefully. However, when he returned home the next morning, the scene before his eyes left him stunned. The house was in disarray, belongings were scattered everywhere, and his wife was nowhere to be seen. He called repeatedly, but received no response. Sensing something was wrong, Liang Zijun had no choice but to immediately report to the police. Instead of hastily cleaning up, he left the scene as it was per the police's request to allow them to conduct an investigation. Immediately after the police arrived, they put on gloves and shoe covers carefully before entering the apartment with maximum caution. Upon entering the living room, they noticed a few drops of blood on the floor that had not yet dried. When they proceeded to the bedroom, the police were surprised by the messy scene. Drawers and wardrobes were left wide open, and items such as clothes, bags, and papers were strewn haphazardly across the floor. Notably, the living room was completely different, tidy and clean, with no signs of rummaging or moving furniture. The sofa and chairs were neatly arranged, showing no signs of being dragged, but instead were perfectly orderly, unlike what one would expect from a burglary. Moreover, the lights in the room were still on, and the TV was even turned on. The situation at hand made the police suspicious. If this were truly a burglary, why was the living room untouched? Although the scene outwardly resembled a typical burglary, upon closer inspection, everything seemed unreasonable, and something was amiss. The investigators began to wonder if this was just a burglary, who left the bloodstains at the door? And why was only the bedroom ransacked, while the living room remained intact? More importantly, where is Zhang Shuni, the owner of the apartment, now? The Liang Zijun Zhang Shuni couple's apartment has 3 bedrooms. The curtains were still intact, the windows were tightly closed, and the main entrance showed no signs of forced entry or tampering. But the strangest thing was that the scene looked like a burglary, yet very few valuable items were taken. The police discovered that aside from Zhang Shuni's mobile phone and her gold ring, no other valuable items were missing. Modern digital devices such as computers, cameras, and TVs were still in place and unharmed. Suddenly, an expensive handbag on the bedroom bed caught the police's attention. When they opened it to inspect, the officer was surprised to find that the bag was filled with large denomination bills. Looking around the crime scene, the police discovered that although the wardrobe next door was damaged, the inside was filled with jewelry made of gold, silver, and jade, all intact with nothing missing. Why did the thief overlook these valuable items? Why did they only take the phone and the gold ring, items not as valuable compared to the others? This anomaly made the police even more suspicious that this was not a simple burglary, but possibly a plot that had been meticulously planned and cleverly concealed. During the investigation, a tightly closed wardrobe in the bedroom suddenly caught the police's attention. The fact that the wardrobe doors were still intact did not seem to match the messy surroundings. An officer gently pulled open the wardrobe doors. Immediately, clothes poured out rapidly from inside the wardrobe, almost covering the entire floor. The team quickly removed the pile of clothes, and a horrifying scene emerged: a young woman, her clothes torn, revealing her underwear, lying motionless among the clothes. Liang Zijun witnessed this scene and couldn't contain his emotions, loudly calling his wife's name. "If I had known in advance, I wouldn't have gone to the hospital. If I had stayed home, perhaps she wouldn't have faced this." Without saying more, Liang collapsed into a sitting position, sobbing loudly in the silent space. The police stood around, heavy-hearted, deeply saddened as they witnessed the tragic scene before them. The victim in the wardrobe was identified as the singer Zhang Shuni, Liang Zijun's wife. Immediately after, the police force contacted the forensic agency to conduct a professional autopsy. The autopsy results showed that Zhang Shuni was struck on the back of the head with a blunt object. However, this injury was not the direct cause of death. Additionally, clear marks of strangulation were found on the victim's neck, indicating that the primary cause of death was strangulation. When a biological examination was conducted on the stomach contents of Zhang Shuni, the forensic doctor determined the time of death to be around 10 p.m. on October 25th. One hypothesis suggested that Zhang Shuni might have discovered the intruder and was killed to silence her. However, this seems unreasonable, as burglaries usually occur around midnight to 3 or 4 in the morning. It is the time when everyone is deeply asleep, allowing the thief to easily break in without being detected by the homeowner. However, in Zhang Shuni's case, the perpetrator carried out the burglary and killed the homeowner around 10 p.m., which is an unreasonable time. More importantly, the traces at the crime scene make the hypothesis of a break in even more contradictory. The door lock showed no signs of being forced or tampered with, and the windowsill was covered in dust without any climbing footprints. It seems there was no way to enter the house unless the perpetrator had a key or Zhang Shuni had opened the door herself, for someone she knew. This leads to the conclusion that the victim and the murderer likely knew each other beforehand. Upon conducting a detailed inspection of the scene, the police discovered many fingerprints, but all belonged to the victim, Zhang Shuni, with no fingerprints from anyone else. Additionally, traces of cleaning were found on the doorknob and the areas around the window, indicating that the killer deliberately erased all traces of themselves before leaving the scene. This is completely different from the behavior seen in home invasion thefts. According to the investigators' experience, thieves usually leave the scene in a hurry after taking the items, without having time to erase evidence. But in Zhang Shuni's case, the murderer not only remained calm, but also carefully cleaned up, eliminating all evidence. This action is not that of a thief, but of someone who came with the intention to kill beforehand, disguising the scene as a burglary, solely to mislead and hinder the police investigation. The residential area where Zhang Shuni lived was not spacious, with only one entrance and one exit. The building's entrance was always closely monitored, especially in the evening, making it difficult for any unusual incidents to go unnoticed by the guards on duty. When the police learned this, they were extremely pleased and hoped that checking each person entering and leaving the residential area on the night of the crime would provide them with an important clue. Because the residential area where the couple Liang Zijun and Zhang Shuni lived was relatively sparse, the investigation workload became lighter compared to other more complex areas. Within just 2 days, the police had verified the identities of everyone appearing in the surveillance videos on the night of the crime. However, what surprised them was that among all those verified, no one showed any suspicious behavior. The question immediately arose: could the murderer have climbed over the wall to enter? However, the CCTV surveillance recordings confirmed that there were no signs of anyone climbing over the wall that night. Subsequently, the special task force delved deeper and came up with an idea. Is it possible that there was a blind spot in the camera's view at the entrance? After multiple thorough inspections, they discovered that there was a small blind spot in the camera's surveillance angle. This blind spot creates an area of about 1 meter that is not recorded. If someone walks close to the wall within this range, the camera will completely ignore their movement. This discovery made the police realize that the perpetrator must have been very familiar with the location of this blind spot. This indicates that the killer was not only familiar with the victim's residential area, but might also have lived there or had close connections to this area. Additionally, the fact that the perpetrator could enter the victim's home normally without making any noise or raising suspicion suggests that he knew Zhang Shuni. If they were not acquainted, it would be very difficult for a woman living alone to easily open the door around 10 p.m. From there, the police decided to focus their investigation on people acquainted with Zhang Shuni, but those in the list of suspects were all eliminated due to lack of relevant evidence. Given the situation, the police decided to start the investigation by focusing on people acquainted with the victim. Zhang Shuni is a famous singer in Hobak and is greatly loved by the local people. When news of her death was announced, public opinion immediately erupted. The public not only mourned for the victim, but also expressed outrage and demanded justice, putting great pressure on the local police force. To quickly clarify the case, after receiving directives from higher authorities, the police director mobilized over 20 experienced criminal police officers to form a special task force to investigate the case. Although Zhang Shuni was only 29 years old, she had a brilliant career since her youth. With her sweet voice, she participated in many music competitions from a young age and continuously won numerous prestigious awards, becoming the pride of the people of Thojia. In addition to her singing talent, she also possessed excellent embroidery skills inherited from her mother, who owned a famous embroidery workshop in Hobak. Upon hearing the news of her daughter's murder, Zhang's mother collapsed, her eyes swollen shut, and she burst into tears. "My daughter is the heir to our family's intangible cultural heritage project, the traditional embroidery craft that has been passed down by our ancestors for generations. Even though she became a singer, she still preserved the essence of our family craft. Zhang Shuni's mother painfully said. Zhang Shuni's mother could never have imagined that her daughter would pass away in such a painful manner. In the police investigation, Zhang Shuni's mother expressed her pain and confusion over her daughter's death. She affirmed that Shuni was a well-mannered person, with a lively, cheerful personality, and was very enthusiastic towards everyone. Zhang Shuni never held grudges against anyone, and always treated everyone kindly. So who would have a motive to harm her daughter? When asked about her son-in-law Liang Zijun, Zhang Shuni's mother affirmed that their relationship was very good. Zhang Shuni had been married to Liang Zijun for 1 year, and her son-in-law was a filial person who always loved and diligently cared for his wife. She could not believe that Liang Zijun would commit such a heinous act against his wife because he was very affectionate towards Zhang Shuni. According to Zhang Shuni's mother, it is possible that this case is related to a man who once loved Shuni but was not reciprocated. Zhang's mother also revealed that her daughter had been married before. After the divorce, she met and married Liang Zijun. When the case reached a deadlock, the police found an extremely important clue in the case. After thorough multiple reviews, they discovered an unusual shoe print under the sofa in Zhang Shuni's house. This pair of shoes was approximately size 36, a much smaller size compared to Zhang Shuni's shoe size. Could this be evidence left by the murderer? The possibility of the culprit being a woman arose in the investigators' minds. However, very few men wear size 36 shoes unless they are of small stature or physically underdeveloped. To be more certain, the police invited footprint experts from the Ministry of Public Security to assist. However, the footprint expert from the Public Security Bureau made a surprising conclusion. The culprit is not a woman, but a man who deliberately wore women's shoes. The shoe prints showed that both the front and back heels were very firmly imprinted, but the soles were somewhat curved, as if a large foot was trying to fit into small shoes. This indicates that the culprit intentionally created misleading information to divert the police investigation. The expert also described the culprit's appearance as a middle-aged man around 40 years old, approximately 170 meters tall, neither too thin nor too fat, but very sturdy and strong. This description was very consistent with the image of Deng, the ex-husband of Zhang Shuni. Throughout the investigation, the police discovered that after the divorce, Deng made numerous attempts to mend his relationship with his ex-wife. He continuously sought ways to approach and persuade Zhang Shuni to give him a second chance. However, Zhang Shuni not only firmly refused, but also straightforwardly drove him away, creating a very tense atmosphere between the two sides. In fact, Deng repeatedly bothered Zhang Shuni's parents simply because he wanted to get back together with her. So, is it because of excessive love combined with bitter jealousy that Deng made the ruthless decision to murder his ex-wife? As the police continued their thorough investigation, all suspicions pointing towards Deng were gradually eliminated. He provided complete alibi evidence and had witnesses confirm that he was elsewhere at the time of the crime. This indicated that Deng could not be the murderer, causing the case to return to square one. This made the case increasingly strange and perplexing. The police decided not to give up and approached the victim Zhang Shuni's mother once again. Suddenly, Zhang Shuni's mother seemed to remember something and said in a trembling voice, "Before marriage, Liang Zijun purchased accident insurance worth 80,000 yuan for my daughter, but he is the beneficiary." Immediately, the police considered the possibility that this could be a case of killing a wife to fraudulently claim insurance money. Although there was no evidence yet, the police recognized the seriousness of this detail. They swiftly expanded their investigation into Liang Zijun's background and behavior to clarify the suspicious points in the case. Liang Zijun was a driver working for a transportation company in Hubei province with an average income. He had gone through a marriage when he was young, but due to irreconcilable disagreements, he and his ex-wife decided to divorce. After that shock, Liang fell into a prolonged state of depression, but fate brought him to meet Zhang Shuni by chance. At that time, Zhang Shuni had also just divorced and was seeking a new life. The two quickly connected, and before proceeding to marriage, they vowed to be together and affirmed that they would remain together for life. In the autumn of 2009, amidst the blessings of friends and family, they officially married and embarked on a new life. However, their married life did not go as dreamed. Zhang Shuni was young, outstanding with beautiful looks and singing talent. As a famous singer, she earned tens of thousands of yuan each month. Additionally, Zhang was skilled in embroidery and often received orders from her mother's embroidery workshop, creating an additional stable source of income. Meanwhile, Liang Zijun had reached middle age, with a monthly income of only about 3,000 yuan. In terms of age, appearance, income, and social status, Liang Zijun seemed incomparable to his wife. This caused those around them to be surprised and somewhat criticize their marriage. Many people commented that the two were too different and incompatible. However, the couple Liang Zijun did not care at all. Both continued to accompany each other regularly in many events, causing people's perception of them to gradually change. That imperfect marriage further aroused suspicion among the police when Zhang Shuni was unexpectedly murdered. The police wondered if Liang Zijun might have daringly killed his wife for money to inherit a large insurance payout. Shortly after, Liang Zijun was urgently summoned to clarify his actions regarding purchasing insurance for his wife. However, in front of the police, he remained calm and composed. According to Liang Zijun, he had the habit of buying insurance long ago, even before divorcing his ex-wife, and the police could verify this information. Liang Zijun had an insurance-selling friend who often asked him for help to meet sales targets, with nothing hidden. If you officers have so much free time, you should focus on finding the real murderer of my wife, Liang Zijun countered. The interrogation concluded, and the police allowed Liang Zijun to leave, but still requested that he not leave Xianfeng district. Subsequently, the police collaborated with the Enshi City's traffic control department to obtain all road surveillance data from the day of the incident. Upon cross-referencing, they confirmed that Liang Zijun was indeed in Enshi during the time he had stated. With this alibi evidence, could the suspicion against Liang Zijun be completely removed? However, the investigators still couldn't help but feel uneasy. Is it possible that Liang Zijun deliberately created an alibi by appearing in places with surveillance cameras? The Xianfeng District Police Department sent an official letter requesting cooperation in the investigation to the Enshi City police agencies. Upon receiving the information, a police team from Enshi quickly conducted an inspection of the hotel where Liang Zijun was renting a room. When the police arrived, the hotel staff stated, Liang Zijun returned to the hotel around 9 p.m. on October 25 and has been in his room ever since without going out. With this schedule, it is clear that Liang Zijun could not have had enough time to commit the crime. While the case had not progressed, the police decided to visit Zhang Shuni's mother once again to inquire about Liang Zijun. Zhang Shuni's mother, although suspicious of Liang Zijun having previously purchased insurance for her daughter, still had a good impression of her son-in-law. Although Liang Zijun is older, he is truly a good man who loves his wife. Since marriage, they rarely argue, Zhang Shuni's mother said. Moreover, when Zhang Shuni tried to eat less to lose weight, Liang Zijun prevented her from doing so out of concern for her health. Therefore, Zhang Shuni's mother does not believe her son-in-law is the culprit. From this perspective, could Liang Zijun truly be innocent? But if not him, who else could be the culprit responsible for Zhang Shuni? While the police were still trying to investigate all leads surrounding the case, a small detail unexpectedly caught their attention: the wedding gift book found at the scene. Upon opening it, one corner of the book was torn, erasing the names of 6 guests recorded on both the front and back covers. This made the police suspicious. Why was only one corner torn? Was this an accidental act or deliberate? Especially According to local customs, the gift book not only records the gifts given by guests, but also includes the signatures of all attendees at the wedding, aiding in verifying the identity of each guest. Fortunately, the police found a copy of the guest list at Zhang Shuni's home. After cross-referencing, they discovered something unusual. Among the 6 names erased, 5 had been eliminated as suspects, leaving only one name uninvestigated: Lu Fushan. The police immediately launched a covert investigation into Lu Fushan and uncovered many suspicious points. Lu Fushan did not have a stable job and frequently wandered around playing cards and gambling. He was not tall, had a thin build, perfectly matching the characteristics of the suspect provided by the footprint expert. Additionally, through secret surveillance, the police noticed that Lu Fushan often wore size 40 shoes. On December 29, the police brought Lu Fushan to the station on charges related to gambling. At first, he appeared very stubborn, but after the police applied psychological pressure, Lu Fushan finally had to admit that he was the one who murdered Zhang Shuni. However, Lu Fushan did not cooperate to detail the crimes he committed. Instead, he posed a cryptic question. Lu Fushan asked, if someone wants to kill a person but doesn't do it directly, and instead uses someone else's hands, whose fault is it? How will the law treat it? This strange question surprised the police. One of the team whispered, "Isn't this using a knife to kill?" But Lu Fushan just smirked, saying nothing more, leaving a mysterious expression. Through investigating call history, the police discovered that before the incident, Lu Fushan and Liang Zijun were in frequent contact. However, after the incident, both completely cut off all communication. This immediately aroused the police's suspicion. Additionally, Liang Zijun's behavior after his wife was murdered was somewhat strange. He always wore a hat and bowed his head, avoiding the gaze of those around him, as if he didn't want anyone to see something. With the accumulating evidence and suspicions, the police decided to arrest Liang Zijun on the night of October 29. Under unavoidable pressure, and perhaps also due to feelings of guilt towards his wife, Liang Zijun quickly confessed. He admitted that he was the one who orchestrated the plot to hire Lu Fushan to murder his wife, Zhang Shuni, to obtain the insurance money. During his statement, Liang Zijun also confessed that he was the one who tore the corner of the wedding gift booklet to hide Lu Fushan's name, intending to protect his accomplice in this cruel scheme. Liang Zijun confessed that the initial intention to plan his wife's murder arose right after Zhang Shuni held her 41st birthday party for him. On October 25, he told Zhang Shuni that he would go to Enshi for a medical examination, and due to the long distance, he would stay overnight at a hotel and not return home. Before leaving, Liang Zijun handed a bank card to his wife and said, "This card belongs to a friend. He will come to pick it up tonight. Please give it to him when he arrives." At exactly 8 p.m., Zhang Shuni returned home for dinner and then took a bath. Around 10 p.m., the doorbell rang. When Zhang Shuni asked who it was, she was told it was her husband's friend, coming to pick up the bank card as instructed. Without any suspicion, she opened the door and invited Lu Fushan into the house. When Lu Fushan entered, Zhang Shuni went to the coffee table to take the prepared bank card. Just as she bent down, Lu Fushan suddenly swung a heavy hammer from behind and struck her hard on the head. Zhang Shuni staggered, in extreme pain, but before she could react, he dragged her into the room, coldly tightened her neck until she suffocated. On December 31, 2010, the police discovered the hammer that Lu Fushan had discarded after committing the crime. When Liang Zijun admitted to the crime, Lu Fushan was compelled to reveal many more details. He also stated that this was not the first time Liang Zijun had asked him to kill his wife. In fact, this was the 4th time after 3 plans had been thwarted by unforeseen circumstances. When asked why he agreed to assassinate Zhang Shuni, Lu Fushan coldly stated that Liang Zijun had promised to reward him 100,000 yuan if successful. However, after the case occurred, Liang still had not paid, citing a lack of sufficient cash. The police concluded that Liang might have planned to pay Lu Fushan after receiving the insurance money from his wife's death. After carrying out the act, Lu Fushan tried to stage the scene as a burglary, cleaned his fingerprints, and quickly fled. Lu Fushan recounted that on the night of the murder, he saw Zhang Shuni sitting on the sofa embroidering shoe soles for Liang Zijun. Lu Fushan bowed his head and said, "Zhang Shuni was a good woman, a wife who loved her husband. Unfortunately, until she closed her eyes, she probably never imagined that her doting husband was the one behind that vicious plot." On September 23, 2011, the court delivered the final verdict in the murder case of the famous singer Hobak Zhang Shuni. Liang Zijun and Lu Fushan were convicted of intentional homicide, and both received death sentences. However, due to their cooperative attitudes and confessions, Lu Fushan's sentence was reduced to life imprisonment. In order to satisfy his insatiable greed, Liang Zijun did not hesitate to spend 80,000 yuan to purchase insurance for his wife, then hired an assassin to kill her for profit. This seemingly perfect plan collapsed when it was uncovered by the police, and the husband's dream of wealth was shattered and vanished like smoke. Liang Zijun will forever be labeled as a wife killer. That greedy, ruthless demon received the death sentence, and it was a deserved punishment.
Angela and Chris were enjoying a happy life as the couple prepared to welcome their second child. However, Angela's sudden death completely turned everything upside down. When the perpetrator was discovered, many were horrified to learn his motive. But did the case really end there? Or are there other secrets hidden? Truth was only revealed when a recording full of terrifying words surfaced, exposing the twisted psychology of educated individuals, souls of demons. What was so special about this recording that helped the police solve the case and bring the mastermind to justice? Don't miss any details of this special case. Follow and watch the entire video to uncover the full truth in this gripping story. Minot, a city known as the Magic City of America, has become famous for its booming economy in recent years. However, behind its peaceful and prosperous exterior, this city was once the scene of a horrifying murder that sent shivers down the spine of the community. Angela Wilder, a devoted mother of 3, had a bright future ahead. She was not only a busy mom, but also a nursing student at Minot State University. As she was preparing to welcome her 4th child, Angela was filled with happiness, knowing that her family was about to welcome another new member. Before Angela could share the joyful news of her pregnancy with her fiancé, she was brutally murdered in her own home. This murder not only took the lives of a young mother and her unborn child, but also left a deep scar on the Minot community. The memories of the case haunted the residents of the city, reminding them of the hidden dangers even in seemingly safe places. On the morning of November 13, 2015, after finishing his night shift and returning home, Chris Jackson, Angela Wilder's fiancé, found the back door broken and many items in the house disturbed. Sensing something was wrong, Chris immediately called out for Angela. No one responded. The unsettling silence enveloped the house, making Chris increasingly anxious. Rushing into the bedroom to check, Chris found their 2-year-old son safe, lying in his crib unharmed. However, the sight before him was horrifying. Angela lay motionless on the bed, having been stabbed to death. Overwhelmed by pain and panic, Chris immediately called 911 to report the incident. Upon receiving the call, the police quickly arrived at the scene. They began investigating, cordoning off the area and collecting evidence. As one of the first officers on the scene, Sergeant Dave Goodman, described it as a very brutal crime. It was only after the forensic team conducted a detailed investigation that the police discovered Angela Wilder had been stabbed more than 40 times, a number that would send chills down anyone's spine. The case shocked not only the Minot community, but also the entire nation, due to the brutality and savagery exhibited by the killer. I can't understand who could harbor such deep hatred against the victim to commit such a heinous act. The crime scene was horrifying. Thinking about it still gives me chills. A neighbor who lived near the victim's home said in shock and fear. According to the autopsy, Angela Wilder had been stabbed 44 times in the face, chest, and neck. Some of the wounds were as deep as 4 inches, about 10 centimeters. These injuries not only caused extreme pain for the victim, but also revealed the killer's deep-seated hatred. Chris Jackson told the police that on the night of the incident, Angela had dropped him off at work at Walmart just before 11 p.m., then returned home alone. Chris's statement became one of the key details helping the police determine the time frame of the crime and begin narrowing down their investigation. According to Chris Jackson's testimony, the night before the murder, Angela Wilder had heard strange noises outside the house. Feeling uneasy, she told Chris that someone might be watching her. However, preoccupied with work and daily concerns, Chris didn't pay much attention to Angela's warning. Nevertheless, the worry for his fiancée being home alone haunted Chris as he went to work the night shift. Throughout the shift, Chris kept texting and calling Angela to check on her. But after 2 a.m., when she didn't respond, he assumed his girlfriend had gone to bed. Little did he know that the silence was a sign of a tragedy unfolding. When questioned by the police, Chris couldn't hide his pain and grief over the loss of his fiancée and their unborn child. In his utter sorrow, he recalled the threats Angela had mentioned and immediately pointed to a suspect, Angela's ex-husband, Richie Wilder Jr. Chris, cursing, demanded that the police investigate Richie Wilder Jr., whom he believed was involved in Angela's death. Chris's suspicion opened a crucial line of investigation for the police. Richie Wilder Jr., Angela's ex-husband, became one of the primary suspects in the investigation. Complicated relationship between Richie and Angela, along with the conflicts from their previous marriage, led the police to scrutinize all the evidence and testimonies to determine who the killer was. After receiving information from Chris, the police immediately summoned Richie. Facing the police, Richie claimed that on the night of the murder, he was home all night with his new wife, Cynthia Wilder, kindergarten teacher at a local school. Cynthia Wilder also confirmed to the police that Richie had an alibi, as he was home all night. She asserted that she had woken up several times during the night to care for their 4-year-old daughter, always found Richie sleeping in bed. According to a neighbor who lived near Richie's home, he and Angela had developed feelings for each other during church visits in Alabama. The couple had once been deeply in love and got married. During their time together, Richie and Angela had 2 children, one 12 years old and the other just 6 years old. However, their happy life didn't last long, as Richie frequently exhibited domestic violence. Unable to endure her abusive husband, Angela decided to divorce, ending their turbulent marriage. As a result, Angela won custody of the children, but the two were allowed to frequently stay with their father. By this time, Richie had remarried to kindergarten teacher Cynthia Wilder. At the time of Angela's death, she and her new fiancé had a 2-year-old son and were expecting their second child. Returning to the case, before being murdered, Angela and her ex-husband had considered each other enemies, as they were embroiled in an endless custody battle. The two were often seen arguing on the street. Although both had new families, Richie and Angela continued to argue over how to raise their 2 children, and their conflicts remained unresolved. Crystal Norton, Angela's sister, recounted a chilling story to the police about a panicked phone call she received from her sister. According to Crystal, Angela had called her one morning in a state of extreme panic.
Frantic phone call from her one morning, and I was like, calm down, what's going on? She says, it's Richie. I just woke up, came out of my bedroom, went into my living room, and he's sitting on my couch and looked at me and said, see, I told you I can get to you if I wanted to.
Crystal recounted the story. Crystal Norton's testimony provided the police with deep insight into the level of threat Richie might have posed to Angela before her murder. These details further reinforced the police's suspicion of Richie's role in Angela's tragic death and became a crucial part of building the case against him. Members of Angela Wilder's family described the marriage between Angela and Richie Wilder Jr. as a prolonged nightmare, ending in a very unsatisfactory way. Not only that, but Richie's violent behavior also led to his expulsion from the military. Being discharged was a significant turning point in Richie's life. This event severely damaged his honor and career, further fueling Richie's hatred and resentment toward Angela. On the night of the murder, their 2 children were with Richie and Cynthia. After Angela was killed, the two immediately offered to support and continue caring for the children while the murder was being investigated. Given Richie Wilder Jr.'s alibi and testimony, the police had to proceed with caution, focusing on the clues found at the scene. Even though Richie tried to provide an alibi to prove his innocence, The physical evidence collected by the police gradually pointed to another truth. After a month of meticulous investigation, the investigators uncovered crucial clues that couldn't be overlooked. One of them was a drop of Angela's blood found on the door of Richie and his new wife Cynthia's car, despite the vehicle being thoroughly cleaned. Moreover, the police found Richie's DNA under Angela's fingernails, clear sign that she had tried to fight back and defend herself in the final moments of her life. Finding Richie's DNA in this location was strong evidence, confirming that there was a struggle between the two, and Richie was very close to Angela when she was attacked. The police also discovered a scratch along Richie's cheekbone shortly after the murder. This injury might have resulted from the struggle between Richie and Angela. Although Richie tried to create an alibi, these pieces of evidence revealed that he was directly involved in Angela's death. With irrefutable evidence, the police had enough grounds to continue legal action against Richie Wilder Jr. and ensure justice was served. Shortly thereafter, Richie was arrested and charged with murder. Meanwhile, his new wife Cynthia was both pleading his innocence and caring for the children while awaiting trial. In August 2016, Richie Wilder Jr. attempted a daring escape from jail. He used a piece of metal from a broom to carve around the window frame in his cell, hoping to escape from prison. However, this action was quickly discovered and thwarted by the police. Failing in his escape attempt, Richie continued to be detained under closer supervision. Initially, Richie remained stubborn and refused to cooperate with the investigators. He refused to talk and stayed silent about the murder of Angela Wilder. However, after a few months in jail, Richie suddenly changed his attitude and requested to meet the detectives to tell a shocking story, which he claimed could change the direction of the investigation. Richie claimed that he and Chris Jackson, Angela's fiancé, had planned together to break into Angela's house. According to Richie's account, both suspected that Angela was cheating on Chris, and they wanted to find evidence of infidelity to use in their custody battle. Richie asserted that when they entered the house, it was Chris who lost control and began stabbing Angela to death. However, the detectives immediately noticed that Richie's story was full of holes and lacked plausibility. Notably, the police had clear evidence from surveillance cameras on the night of the murder, showing Chris Jackson working at Walmart throughout his shift, completely absent from the crime scene. In December 2016, Richie Wilder Jr. stood trial, accused of murdering his ex-wife, Angela Wilder. However, Richie pleaded not guilty and insisted that he was not the killer. Throughout the trial, he continuously shouted, blaming Chris Jackson, Angela's fiancé, claiming that Chris was the one who killed her. Richie's aggressive behavior and attitude in the courtroom not only failed to help him escape conviction, but also caused many in attendance feel disgusted and angry. Many people in the courtroom expressed their contempt for Richie, who was seen as a ruthless person who murdered his ex-wife, the mother of his children. Given the clear and undeniable evidence presented at the trial, the jury took less than an hour to reach a verdict. Richie Wilder Jr. was found guilty of murdering Angela Wilder. Outside the courtroom, Richie's new wife, Cynthia Wilder, broke down in tears and continued to insist that Richie was innocent.
He's a good man. He's a good husband. He would never do anything that would hurt his kids. I got up on a couple occasions with my kids. When I got up, he was at home.
However, Cynthia's defense could not change the outcome of the trial, as all the evidence was against Richie. 5 months after the trial, Richie Wilder Jr. was sentenced to life without parole for murder and received an additional 5-year sentence for attempting to escape. The case seemed to have closed after Richie Wilder Jr. was sentenced to life, but an unexpected turn of events changed everything. While her husband served a life sentence, Cynthia Wilder rekindled her relationship with her ex-boyfriend, Matt Walters, and revealed a shocking story. Matt Walters, a bartender, had known Cynthia before she married Richie. The two had once had a close relationship when Matt worked at the Original in Minot. After some time apart, Cynthia and Matt lost contact, but things changed after Richie was arrested. Cynthia found Matt Walters on Facebook and reached out to reconnect with him. The two began chatting online, and Cynthia openly shared about her current life. During her conversations with Matt, Cynthia kept insisting that Richie was innocent and that he had been home with her on the night of Angela's murder. However, as Matt Walters continued to talk with Cynthia, he increasingly found more suspicious points in her story. One of these conversations became a turning point when they discussed Richie's arrest. Matt commented that killing someone with a knife wasn't a smart way to commit a murder. This remark seemed to trigger something in Cynthia. Provoked by Matt's comment, Cynthia revealed that killing Angela with a knife wasn't the original plan for her and Richie. Cynthia's confession completely changed the direction of the investigation, opening up a series of new questions about her role in the murder. If killing with a knife wasn't the original plan, what led to the change? And most importantly, what was Cynthia's true role in the case? Cynthia Wilder's story became even more horrifying when she told her ex-boyfriend Matt Walters that the knife was just a backup plan. It was supposed to be a gun. Realizing the seriousness of Cynthia's words, Matt decided he couldn't stand by. He secretly contacted the police and agreed to cooperate by installing recording devices in his car and on his mobile phone. Matt then arranged a face-to-face meeting with Cynthia to try and gather more information about the case. According to the plan, Matt invited Cynthia to a bar, and the two began chatting as usual. Throughout the meeting, Matt tried to steer the conversation towards Angela's murder, but Cynthia didn't mention the case until the meeting was nearly over. Unexpectedly, Cynthia expressed a disturbing pride in her husband, Richie Wilder Jr., despite him having murdered his ex-wife. In the recorded conversation, Cynthia said,
I'm proud of him. I'm just pissed that he got caught and that he got sloppy and impatient. And
these words not only showed Cynthia's understanding and empathy for Richie, but also revealed that she knew exactly what had happened on the night Angela was killed. Cynthia further revealed the horrifying detail that she and Richie had been planning to murder Angela for over 2.5 years. The plan had been carefully prepared. Everything went wrong when Richie returned home on the morning after the murder. Richie recounted to her that Angela had fought back fiercely, scratching his face, making things more complicated and difficult to control.
Fighting for her life. Face, and that's what got him too, was, if it was me, I would have gone back and cut her fingers off. I would have burned them. I would have lit the house on fire.
The story became even more dramatic as Cynthia Wilder revealed more chilling details about the night Richie Wilder Jr. murdered his ex-wife, Angela Wilder. According to Cynthia's confession, she and Richie even had sex that night, despite him having just killed Angela. Cynthia also revealed that she had tried to help her husband escape after he was arrested. She arranged a car, clothes, and a mobile phone to assist Richie in fleeing, but the attempt failed. In her conversation with Matt Walters, Cynthia admitted that Richie had gone mad with his ex-wife because of hatred, anger, and frustration. These negative emotions had driven Richie to the brink of cruelty, leading him to brutally murder Angela. Cynthia even cheerfully admitted that she had helped Richie clean up the blood in the car after the murder and had participated in planning the details of the crime. Even more terrifying, Cynthia casually declared that it had to be done. When speaking about Angela's murder, she even expressed pride in Richie for killing his ex-wife, demonstrating the twisted thoughts and attitudes she had toward the crime. According to Cynthia, Richie hated his ex-wife so much that he couldn't just stab her once in the neck, but instead went mad and stabbed Angela dozens of times to satisfy his rage. After obtaining the recording, the police immediately arrested her and charged Cynthia with conspiracy to commit murder. After being arrested by the police, Cynthia claimed that while some of the things in the conversation were partly true, most were grossly exaggerated to impress Matt, who also had a criminal past. With the recording full of evidence, the prosecutors offered a plea deal that included a 25-year prison sentence, but Cynthia steadfastly refused. However, during her time in custody, she changed her mind, realizing she couldn't escape her crime. In November 2017, Cynthia Wilder pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and assisting her husband in escaping. A judge sentenced Cynthia to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As for Richie, in September 2017, he unsuccessfully appealed his sentence to the North Dakota Supreme Court, seeking a retrial. In the appeal, Richie requested the right to contact his 2 children from his marriage to Angela through visits, phone calls, or letters. Previously, in a September 19, 2017 ruling, Judge Gary Lee confirmed that he had the authority to prohibit Richie from contacting his children in various circumstances. Judge Gary Lee stated that Richie had lost his parental rights due to serving a life sentence without parole. His loss of contact with his children was not an additional punishment but a collateral consequence of killing Angela Wilder. As for Richie's children, according to the police, the two children shared by Richie and Angela are now living in another state with their grandmother, who was appointed as their legal guardian. Meanwhile, Richie and Cynthia's child is being raised by Richie's father in another state. In August 2020, both Richie and Cynthia Wilder sought retrials and filed for sentence reductions after being convicted. The Devil couple was reportedly trying to overturn their life sentences for the murder of Angela Wilder, 30 years old, in 2015. In the filing, Cynthia Wilder claimed that her defense attorney had been ineffective. Additionally, she asserted that she had reached a deal for a 25-year sentence, but Ward County Judge Stacey Lauser handed down a life sentence instead. In response to Cynthia's accusations, her defense attorney denied them, stating that he had fulfilled his duties. On August 5, 2021, Cynthia Louise Wilder, 30 years old, serving a life sentence without parole for helping her husband plan the 2015 knife murder of his ex-wife, continued to appeal. She insisted that her words to Matt were merely exaggerations of the events. However, the court denied Cynthia's appeal and upheld her life sentence without parole. The court's decision closed a case full of tragedy and brutality, ensuring that both Cynthia and Richie Wilder Jr. would be held accountable for the crimes they committed, and bringing some measure of justice for Angela Wilder and her family.